At Battery Bill, we power everything by battery. It's not if an emergency happens, but when. Are you ready? Be prepared for this hurricane season. Having backup power ready for these necessities, home, refrigerator, and phone are essential for peace of mind to have uninterrupted power during an emergency. Do you need an affordable, reliable backup power solution? We have it. Goal Zero, Jackery, and EcoFlow. Reliable, innovative, and affordable. Power when you need it. Battery Bill, Mapuna-Puna, Nimitz, and Hilo. Battery Bill.
All right, how's it going, everybody? We welcome you to episode 109 here on Hawaii Football Now. Jordan Helly, Hunter Hughes with you for another edition here this week. Heading into the opening week of conference play, University of Hawaii football program, 5 games into the season. They'll have 8 straight in conference to round out the regular season schedule. Our guy, Jared Kabashikawa, filling in on the producing duties here this week for us. Big mahalo to Spectrum Mobile, Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union, and Battery Bill. Set to release this Thursday, September 28th, wherever you may find us. We're still not on YouTube. I don't know when that's going to get resolved, but appreciate you guys finding us wherever you get your podcasts, or maybe listening to us as part of the lead-in to Countdown to Kickoff here before UNLV this Saturday. We record this Wednesday, September 27th, just after 7 a.m. All right, final episode of September. Kind of crazy, man. 5 weeks went by in the blink of an eye. Hawaii already basically, a quarter past through their season. And we got Vegas on our minds because it's Hawaii, it's UNLV. It's a little earlier in the schedule than years past, when the Bows and Rebels meet up, in part because they got that F1 thing going on in November. So it's a little earlier in the season showdown for the Island Showdown Trophy, which Hawaii currently possesses based on their victory last year. I'm back home in the islands. Our guy Hunter is in Sin City, living it up, eating well, hopefully hitting the links, and whatever else your mind can dream up, you can find it in Las Vegas. Hunter, how is it? You guys got in yesterday?
Yeah, we got in, I think a little after 4:30-ish. And right as we landed, the pilot told us it was 97 degrees outside. So we all were
97.
Man, we were a bit antsy, but it wasn't quite that bad. That desert dry heat doesn't quite hit you in the chest nearly like our humid Hawaii heat back home. So it wasn't too bad. And then before you know it, it's nighttime and we're walking under Fremont Avenue. And first time I've ever seen that. First time I've been on this side of the strip where I'm told the locals go, Jordan. We're staying up here at the Cal, the whole ESPN Honolulu crew, and I'm thankful they let a Holly guy like me check in without any problems.
Yeah, you're with the right crew. You're definitely with the right crew, with the ESPN Honolulu motley crew that is up there. So it's going to be fun. There are going to be a lot of folks in town. I'd imagine you're seeing some of those fans already up there. Anytime there's a game on the road at UNLV, there's usually a fair amount of green in the stands, whether it was at the old Sam Boyd or now at Allegiant. Even likely more than sometimes there are at UH home games. So that's gonna be pretty fun. But I got to imagine you're running into people up there.
Maybe 40% of our flight had UH green on. One of them, Auntie was airing out her feet next to me on the flight, which was very nice. It was a nice little wake up call from a nap. This is kind of like University of Hawaii's personal little hotel or casino over here. Every time I just got back from a little morning buffet, and UH green left and white, and we're a long way from home, Jordan. So it's kind of a unique little thing here. You said it perfectly. We travel best here probably more than anywhere else, and it kind of feels oddly like another home game for us. So I know we're really excited about starting conference play this weekend against the Rebels.
Yeah, home away from home, that is for sure. Gonna be a lot of fun. One little side note before we get into more of the University of Hawaii discussion, did want to let everybody know that back here at home, you'll be able to hear the University of Hawaii game, obviously, on ESPN Honolulu, the fans' voice, all of that good stuff. And then later on Saturday evening, ESPN Honolulu is actually broadcasting the Lahaina Luna Baldwin game, the Luna's first game back this season, first game, obviously, since the horrific wildfires early August. So a little special edition of Prep Football coming your way on ESPN Honolulu, and just wanted to kind of put that on everybody's radar. That'll be a 7 p.m. kickoff on Saturday night, the 30th. So big football day for the local football fans, that is for sure. All right. Before we get into the game time, I want to remind you that Hawaii Football Now is brought to you by Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. Originally opened in 1936 as a credit union for educators, Hawaii USA has inspired a culture of giving that is rooted in education and has since become Hawaii's largest credit union and expanded to other areas of community need that impact financial health, including healthcare, housing, and hunger. To learn more, please visit hawaiiusafcu.com. All right, game time here on episode 109, Hawaii Football Now. Glad to have you along with us, Jordan and Hunter. Hawaii picking up win number 2 on the season, 2-3 through their 5 non-conference games here in 2023, after for the third straight year started 1-3, right? All 3 of those losses coming to Power 5 opponents. And so all in all, at 2-3 through the first 5, I think, kind of as expected. I think they're in a decent spot, right? Obviously, you go 4-4 through the conference, it gives you the 6-7. That likely gets you into a bowl game. You go 5-3, you're definitely in a bowl game at 7-6. Hawaii defeating New Mexico State 20-17, arguably kind of the marquee victory early on of the Timmy Chang era. And I get it, 3 wins last year, 2 wins this year. Hawaii 20-17 after trailing 17-3 at halftime. Closing number I saw was Hawaii -3, so that basically a wash, a push at Hawaii -3, and well under the 55.5 point total. Hawaii now 2-2-1 against the spread on the season, and the over now just 2-3 so far, as the under has been the right bet in 3 of the 5 games. Outscored New Mexico State 17-0 in the second half. Hunter and I, we're often near each other on the sideline for the games that we're both working. We usually convene around halftime. We both get a chance to talk to Coach Timmy Chang. And before they came out of the locker room, boy, Hunter, the feeling was pretty bleak, man. They were getting outplayed every which way in the first half. If it wasn't for like a just season-changing type play from Sauce Williams on the defense, this easily could have been 20-0 at halftime, maybe even as bad as 24-0 at halftime. And at that point, you're really searching for answers. But they flipped the script completely and outplayed New Mexico State in the second half after a first half where they really couldn't get anything going offensively. They were missing tackles. It looked like deja vu all over again, going back to last year when New Mexico State just boat raced Hawaii and Las Cruces. And they found something. They found something at halftime. But boy, it felt like they really needed this one. You could tell there was some emotion after the game. It was a little cathartic, I think, and a huge win against a pretty quality New Mexico State team. And in that fashion, to come from behind a walk-off field goal by Matt Shipley, which should not be overlooked, obviously, even if it was a chippy, the clutch gene to go finish that thing. What were your initial takeaways, Hunter?
Man, you hit on a lot of it, Jordan. It was an emotional game from start to finish. The first half was sloppy, kind of like the weather. You and I both made breaks for cover to go find a rain jacket or two and a hat because we were getting dumped on. The Manoa Mist was turned up just a few more clicks, and kind of along with that, it was just kind of slow for us out of the gate. I think that's safe to say. Offense was not clicking. The personnel group that we threw out there was just not a good fit offensively for Braden Shager. He just didn't look set or comfortable back there. You and I are quarterbacks. He was throwing off his back foot, and trying to make something happen, whether it be through a scramble drill or trying to find guys outside the pocket. But that's not really his strength when it comes to his gameplay. He's a bigger guy and needs to kind of stay in the pocket and get a rhythm to get some things going on offense. And we didn't have much of that. And I think some of that you could point to not a great running attack. Some of it could be trying to maybe fit maybe a square peg in a round hole. And one adjustment that I'm thinking about right off the bat was kind of swapping out our tight end Grayson Morgan for slot Kwali Nishigaya. I think that one move really changed up the dynamicness, if that's a word. I guess it is over here in Vegas. The dynamicness of our play calling and what we could do. And then the other thing, we started throwing Jordan Johnson into the flat and getting him into some open space. And I don't know about you, Jordan, but to me, it felt like he was the only one willing to play hard and play fast. Maybe not hard in terms of effort, but he looked like he was running with more will than the rest of the guys on our offense, and wasn't afraid of getting hit, hurt, whatever you want to call it. And he was the guy we needed to get the ball to, and we did in the second half. And he kind of set a charge into us. And we've noticed this about. I'm going to shift over to defense real fast. Coach Yoro has done this throughout his career. The ability to make adjustments at halftime and throw a different look at our opponents is what makes him a really great defensive coach. Because not only did we hold them to only, I believe it was 18 plays in the second half, something like that. No points. And they looked like they were in control of the game with 17 in the first half, and looked over at you like, we're going to need close to 30 to win this game. And yet completely changed the tide there. I was very impressed with our team's grit, our determination, our heart. And then honestly, Coach Timmy's ability to kind of manage the situation. It didn't feel too big for everybody down the stretch. We killed that clock with, I think we got the ball back with over 3 minutes and dwindled it all the way down to a second and let Shipley close the deal. So definitely a sigh of relief and kind of an emotional, cathartic thing, as you said, Jordan, to kind of relieve our way into a 2-3 record.
Yeah, the first half was a failing grade, I think, all around. The encouraging thing I thought defensively was, and again, I think credit to Coach Orr on that defensive staff. Like, guys were in position to make plays, they weren't making tackles, and that's why I think it felt really, a little different than that New Mexico State game last year. Like the New Mexico State game last year, like guys there were lanes open, dudes in the wrong gaps, and unable to really be in position to go make plays. When New Mexico State ran it for over 350 and 5 touchdowns against UH last year. This year, they were in position. They were just missing tackles. That changed in the second half. They did a much better job. Part of that was they were only on the field for 8 minutes, right? The offense held the ball for a long, long while in the second half. They stole a possession, right, with the onside kick. Kudos to the special teams there. Onside kick recovery. Obviously, the game-winning field goal. You talked about, right? It's a learning process to win. It's a process learning how to win. And so part of that is game management. Part of that is knowing when to take risks. Part of that is managing clock down the stretch. And I thought they were better at that in this game. And that partly, or largely falls on the shoulders of Coach Chang. And I think that is, a bit of a process with him having to juggle all the play calling duties as well. And yeah, look, they got the football back with exactly 3 minutes on the clock, as you pointed out, and they never gave it back. Right. They ran it all the way down to the final snap, and it was a game-winning field goal. And I thought they managed that pretty darn well. And they were willing to make some adjustments in the second half, in large part, I think, as you pointed out, really sort of just going all in with the 4 wide. And I think that simplified things offensively. I think it created a clearer picture for Braden Shager. They were much better on third down in the second half. That had to do, I think, a lot with his confidence. Kawhi Nishigaya was massive. And not only did they, I think, commit to the 4 wide there, and I don't know what the game plan is going forward. It may be different week to week. It may be situational. But it was a lot of Kofele Ashlock, it was a lot of Nishigaya, and it was a lot of Stephen McBride. And that's a conversation we've had almost every week, right? It's like, hey, is there going to be a point when you narrow down the playing time, right? Where you whittle it down to like, okay, here's our core 3, here's our core 4. We're going to rotate the other guys maybe at that second wideout spot, or maybe a couple of the slots rotate or something like that, right? And I don't know if that's going to be the case going forward, but that was the case in the second half. Guys were still rotating in. There were some snaps to be had for other players, but for the most part, it was a lot of those 3 guys on the field. And that was as good as Shager has looked since the Vandy game, right? And I don't know if it's a comfort level. I don't know if it's building chemistry. The offensive line played better. Still gave up a couple of quarterback hits. And that's, I think, the one aspect that's going to get glossed over. And I know it's not getting glossed over by Roman Sapolu or that offensive staff. And Coach Chang and Coach Shoemaker with Shager in particular. Like, he's got to hold on to the football, right? He had 2 fumbles, could have been catastrophic in the ball game. One on that second possession of the second half where they're looking like, hey, look, there's all kinds of momentum here. They're already in field goal range. He coughs it up trying to scramble, right? Cannot happen. Just cannot happen. And then left tackle getting beat, in a drive that results in the tying touchdown, right? Was it?
Yep.
Right. In that one where Josh Atkins is actually the guy who
He
gets
picked up
beat.
the ball. Yeah.
Shager fumbles again, but the ball bounces right into his hands. And so you got to take advantage of some luck, right? And I think right there was as big a break as they've gotten all season. And all of a sudden, what looked like maybe a huge sack on 1st and 20, possibly a turnover that would have killed all the momentum there with Hawaii still trailing, turns into a 15-yard game by the offensive lineman, right? And so it wasn't perfect in the second half. It could have easily gone the other way. And I think a lot of that will get overlooked. And look, I'm not trying to be the rain cloud here or anything. And again, I think they're going to clean this up, but that's one of the things. They got to be able to hold on to the football. Can't fumble it. Even if you're getting hit, even if you're taking sacks, even if you're scrambling out there. But it just looked so much better. Like, it just looked so much cleaner. It looked so much more fluid. The ball was coming out of Shager's hands at a faster clip. He was getting it outside. Guys were, the rate of guys getting open. And I think, understanding where they needed to be, whether it was McBride or Ashlock or Nishigaya, really, in all of that. And then I think the other added element that you pointed out, George Johnson, I thought was terrific, and gives them the most dynamic threat out of the backfield, I think, in terms of pass catching.
Right? I know.
A lot of what we thought maybe Tylen Hines was going to provide, and it's not a knock on Tylen. He's obviously been banged up, hasn't played the last couple of weeks, but Jordan Johnson gave them that, right? 3 catches, 35 yards, came in big moments. I think a couple of them came on 3rd down, if I'm not mistaken, or at least when maybe they were behind the chains and kind of got them back on schedule. His ability to come out of the backfield, catch some of those checkdowns were game changing and added a little 5th element to the pass game. And I liked that. I like the 4 wide. I like getting Johnson involved. It was as fun, and I think as close to what we maybe pictured when the whole run and shoot conversation came back, to anything we've seen since that New Mexico State game last year, where they started introducing the concepts.
Yeah. Just speaking on the 4 wide situation, it certainly simplifies your play calling because you aren't having to Jimmy rig that tight end to try to fill the same responsibilities of a Kawhi Nishigaya or a Pofele Ashlock. Like, they're just, any of our tight ends, as talented as they are, they're just not going to be as elusive and fast to run the same kind of routes. And so, with Timmy taking on a lot of that play calling responsibility from the sideline, it just simplifies a lot of things. It simplifies things as a quarterback, looking at your guys on, okay, I know I have front side, back side, and we don't have to, oh, by the way, on top of front side to back side, you've got an extra guy over here. It's just, it kind of cleans it all up, Jordan. It's again, I've talked about this at length, but the first couple of years of the Rolo era was very similar to this, where we didn't quite have the personnel to completely commit to the run and shoot. You can almost kind of feel like, okay, now might be the time. Now might be the time in this year for us to just say, you know what, let's stick with what's working. Um, it may not be perfect. We probably do still need some tight end help on time to time, depending on down and distance. But it's obvious. It's obvious from a bystander's point of view, a former player's point of view. The flow and the momentum is evident when at least those three guys are in there: McBride, Fele Ashlock, and Koali Nichigaya. There's been times where we've seen we've seen tremendous plays from various others, right? Definitely got to talk about Chucky Hines. Got to
Mm-hmm.
talk about Nick Senecal, Jalen Walthall, and then Alex Perry.
Mm-hmm.
But this last game, Alex Perry had a one-on-one slant route, and he kind of sissied out of the last part of the route. I'm just going to be honest, where we were down in distance in our red zone, and he didn't finish his route, and the ball was in front of him where it should be, and it could have even been a touchdown, and he didn't run fully through that route. And so I'm bringing that up just because that last receiver position is kind of up for grabs right now on whoever is the sharpest, whoever is the most eager, and honestly the most dependable, for guys like Braden Shager and Coach Timmy Chang, obviously, on who are we going to lean on. So um, yeah, that's interesting, Jordan. I think we're at that point right now of kind of committing to those guys, and yeah, I really hope it's a sign of quality momentum or some wind at our sails on what's to come here in conference play.
Yeah, I thought Walthall played pretty well. 6 grabs, 32 yards. Let's dive into some of the numbers here. Hawaii overall as an offense gained 343 yards, ran 67 plays to New Mexico State's 47. Right, so New Mexico State actually averaged 7.1 yards per play, but kept them off the field in the second half. New Mexico State 335 yards of total offense. Hawaii threw it for 245. Shager 26 of 37 through the air. New Mexico State threw it for 155 yards on 9 of 15 passes. A big play passing game, man. 17.2 yards per completion for New Mexico State. Hawaii ran it for 98 yards. Not bad. Again, the running game kind of doing its job. New Mexico State ran it for 180. Much different than the 350 last year. 21 Hawaii first downs to 16 for New Mexico State in this ball game. Hawaii 6 of 15 on third down. I swear all of those came in the second half. I don't have quite the drive chart in front of me, but that's just kind of the way it seemed. New Mexico State was 5 of 10 on third down. Hawaii 1 of 1 on fourth down as well, kind of late in the ball game. Right now, got to have it, and barely got it to keep that drive alive. That ultimately led to maybe the tying touchdown if it was. Just one sack given up, technically, in this ball game from Hawaii, and just 4 penalties for 25 yards. And that had been some glaring issues, right, for this team. Penalties, discipline. I thought they played pretty straight vest in the second half. And then the one sack, he was hurried a couple of times. And obviously that fumble could have been catastrophic, but wasn't quite in that ball game. Some of the individual numbers in the contest, we mentioned Shager 245 through the air, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 26 of 37. Jordan Johnson 44 yards on 9 carries. Landon Sims 28 yards on 5 carries. He looks about as healthy as we've seen him in a while. Nice little spark. I thought he played pretty well, ran tough. Najee Bryant-Lele, who we saw a little cameo late down inside the 10-yard line, ran it twice for 4 yards. David Cordero ran 1 carry for 3 yards. And then Josh Atkins officially in the stat book, 23-yard rush on the fumble recovery, if you will, was a net of 15 positive yards from 1st and 20 to
If you
2nd
like
and
big
5.
boys, if you
Yeah,
like big boys running the rock, like this was your game to
this
go
was your
to.
game. This was your game, and we're gonna get to our guy Sauce here in a second. Pofele Ashlock, 7 grabs, 77 yards. Stephen McBride, 4 for 47. Nishigaya, 4 for 44, and the touchdown. Jordan Johnson, we talked about, had 3 grabs for 35 yards. Walthall, 6 grabs for 32 yards. And Landon Sims, 2 catches for 10 yards. So not quite the 10 or whatever it was the other week, right? Of Hawaii pass catchers. Alex Perry, the only other guy to get a target in this ball game. Defensively for Hawaii, they didn't quite live in the backfield like we saw against Albany a couple of weeks ago. 3 tackles for loss, the 1 sack, and then the 1 huge turnover. Peter Monoman and Isaiah Tufanga both had 6 tackles. Jojo Forrest, 4 tackles. Credit for a half TFL and 2 pass breakups. He was kind of big in pass coverage as well. Cam Stone, good to see him back. He was active, no doubt about that. And then you got our guy Sauce Williams, who was just a magnificent beast out there, and in fact was Pro Football Focus's highest graded defensive player this past week. He's getting better and better, and came up with maybe the play of the game. Definitely changed the tide a bit there mid-second quarter. New Mexico State's driving. They got a chance to go up even more. I think it was 10-0 at the time, but they were fully in control of the ball game. And he goes in there, running backs being held up, and he just straight lawnmowers that thing out of there, athletic enough to catch it out of midair and then rumble for like 30 yards back the other way. It's about as loud outside of, the game-tying touchdown and things a little bit later, but that's about as loud as I've heard that place in a while. In the 2 seasons that they've really been able to put people in the stands, he electrified that place, and our guy Sauce deserves all the credit, because without that play, and he played pretty solid really throughout the game. This might be a much different conversation in the aftermath.
Absolutely. And on top of that, held on to the football. We all kind of saw it happening almost in slow motion. Not him running, of course, because he's lightning Sauce, of course. But that running back was tracking him down, and we all knew he was going to go for that football, trying to get it back. And big boy Sauce held on to his, man. That was encouraging. And kind of speaking of encouraging, Jordan, they I would love to go back and watch the film, honestly, and see what they did differently to kind of cap Diego Pavia, because he was a problem. He was a problem in that first half. Getting the ball out of his hands quickly, shifting up in the pocket, kind of just slipping out. And you and I, at several points from just watching it, were like, man, he's slippery and finds his way into space and isn't ridiculously fast or ridiculously elusive, but it's enough to get him into space. And he extended some plays. Really great job from guys like Isaiah Tufanga and Kemma and Emerson as well. Kind of, what we were talking about last week, the need to kind of fill the gap that Logan Taylor left behind there in the linebacker core. They did a really good job in my mind, kind of keeping that offense at bay, which up until now was averaging 250 in the air and 250 on the ground. That's pretty stinking consistent numbers right there. So really impressed by that defense. They, as you said, they charged our stadium at a couple of different moments. It felt like in the second half we could almost count on them for 3 and outs, which we're not used to seeing, to be honest. And I think this might be a good time, Jordan, just to bring up perspective as before we shift and talk about UNLV, because preseason, we had talked about there's a chance that we could go 3-3 in non-conference, or 3-2 in non-conference, but more than likely we were going to end up 2-3 before we head into conference play. And we're exactly there. We're exactly where we thought we were going to be, with exception of maybe that Vandy game where that was kind of a, if the ball bounces in our direction and we capitalize, we might even sneak away with that one. So the games that we've lost have been against teams that are bigger than us. They're more physical, and in the trenches can just overpower us. They could run through us or run over us pretty much at will. New Mexico State was the first test of a team evenly matched with us. Very similar size, very similar abilities, similar recruiting, that we find ourselves faced with, and we matched up a lot better. Last year, we did not have as good of a football team as we do now. I think that's fair to say. And with that, over the span of the season, we only lost to a margin of 30 points. So just about each one of our losses came at a deficit of only one score. I think that's really positive perspective looking at our team right now, because anybody that follows our team would agree we've got a better team. Who knows what we're going to do in conference? Who knows? But I think that's a really good kind of temperature on where we could head into conference play.
Yeah, sometimes results can mask performance, right? And I think the really good coaches, right, they don't get caught up too much in the end result as opposed to the process, right? You get a lot of process oriented coaches, and look, it's a hell of a lot better to win the game than not.
Way better.
And you're going to feel a lot better about things, and you know, you can often get messages across in different ways when you're winning football games and versus losing football games. But the difference between 2 and 3 and 1 and 4, just from a morale standpoint, the way they won that game, as you pointed out, really the first like opponent that they played all season long, right? A game that really could have gone either way, and they're able to grind it out. They're able to make adjustments at halftime. They're able to see, I think, you know, hey, when we do things, when we do our job how it's supposed to be done, good things can happen. Yeah, we're not playing Oregon. That's, you know, that's just going to be a different beast when it comes to it. But when we get into these conference games, it's going to be like this week in and week out. They're going to be a lot of really competitive ball games, and they're going to be able to, you know, hopefully kind of draw back on this, and I think be better about it in terms of winning some of these close ball games as well. Matt Shipley, man, the dude's just been sort of Mr. Consistent. He keeps climbing his way up the all-time stat board for University of Hawaii place kickers, and that's a pretty renowned list of guys. You know, Hawaii's had a lot of really good kickers over the years. And I get it. Look, it wasn't the longest of kicks. But he had to bang it true, and he did in a moment where, hey, you missed that, and you know, there's not a lot of excuses when it's that close. But that was pretty cool stuff, and he was pretty impervious in the moment. Not even like a big celebration from him, you know, just business as usual. And he's been one of the more consistent guys all career long for the University of Hawaii.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been really impressed with him. Little shaky to start the year, I think it's fair to say, Jordan, not so much on the field goal end of things, but on the punt side of things. Our special teams has found a way to kind of tighten the screws down the stretch. And I heard from our guy Tanner Hayworth that it's the first time since like the early 2000s that we've actually won on a last second game winning field goal. So I was most impressed with our kind of control of the clock and control of the football to put us in winning time situation right there. And yeah, Chip went out there and made a little chip shot. That was that was awesome, man. And just to see the reactions from the coaches, the players, genuine, like hugging, embracing each other. You were on the field, Jordan, shortly after the game. It definitely felt like okay, the season is not over yet. Let's see what we can improve on. We're not done yet. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah, there's a lot to play for now going forward, and they get to wipe the slate clean just a little bit. Yeah, I saw our guy Christian Shimabuku tweeted out right last time Hawaii on a walk-off field goal as time expired. There have been some big game-winning kicks over the years. The Dan Kelly field goal against Nevada. I think he had the one against La Tech as well. But Justin Ayat, November 17th, 2001, in a 52-51 win over Miami, Ohio at Aloha Stadium, also from 24 yards out. UH fans remember that one. The Miami was quarterbacked by some guy named Ben Roethlisberger in that game. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Ayat missed, but there was a penalty. And so he got a redo. And he banged it on the Kamehameha graduate. I was actually there as a kid. I was 11 years old. And that was one hell of a football game. Ashley Lee, Nick Rolovich, Ben Roethlisberger. There were a lot of points scored. I don't know if we went home till like midnight, I think, that night. 52-51.
Was Stutz on that team too?
Yeah, 2001. Stutz would have been there.
Yeah,
Stutz would have been there. Yeah, that's the year I think Timmy got hurt, if I'm not mistaken. Then Rolo stepped in.
And then Rolo came in. Yeah,
because 2001. Yeah, that's the year they played on Maui as well, right? They opened the season against Montana here on Maui, and then had a great run all the way to BYU later on that season.
Right. Yeah.
Just a crazy year. As they scoreboards ran out of bulbs, I think, with that group. 52, not even the highest point total of the season for Hawaii that year. Pretty cool stuff. So yeah, kudos to that team. It was a huge 3rd and 9 completion on that drive that kept the thing going, that ultimately led to the game-winning field goal. There was big pass interference that Pofele Ashlock drew as well, and they managed the last minute 30 or so pretty well to set up that game-winning field goal. So Matt Shipley, good job by you, man. Good kick there. All right, we'll take a halftime break, and then we'll get into the UNLV matchup. Boy, a pretty decided underdog against the Rebels. More of that discussion when we return. Hawaii Football Now, episode 109.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second halftime here on episode 109. Hawaii Football Now. Jordan and Hunter back with you. Conference opener this week in Vegas. A little early call time. 1 p.m. local kick. That's 10 a.m. Hawaii time. You can listen to it, of course, on ESPN Honolulu. Hunter will be there on the sidelines at Allegiant Stadium, making the travel squad. I like it for my guy here. It'll also be on Spectrum pay-per-view television. UNLV, at last check, a 11-point favorite. Let me double check that because I wrote that down yesterday.
I saw it on the sports book wall last night from what's it called, the Circa, the massive sports book at the Circa. I saw it going across the strip. So
yeah, there you go.
That is true.
There you go. Yeah, they actually opened UNLV opened it 8-point favorites, and so a lot of money flowing in on the Rebels to bump that all the way to 11. I think I saw some other place where it went up all the way to a dozen, I think. And the total 59.5. That's been bet up a little bit, as the total was about 55.5 when I looked, or 56.5, I think, when I looked the other day. So the Island Showdown Trophy on the line, 33rd all-time meeting between Hawaii and UNLV, one of the oldest rivals for the Rebels, dating back to their inception in the late 60s. You go back to last year, right? It was a 31-25 victory for Hawaii at Ching. One of UH's 3 wins, and quite honestly, might have been the straw that broke the camel's back and led to the firing of Tony Sanchez. And they have brought in a good one in Barry Odom so far. As the Rebels are 3-1 with wins against Vandy and UTEP. That's right, they beat Vanderbilt, albeit in Vegas, same squad that Hawaii lost to by a single score in Nashville in week 0. Their lone loss, 35-7 at Michigan. Pretty respectable against a top 4 team in the country. Of course, a couple of familiar faces. Former receivers coach Brendan Marion is the offensive coordinator for UNLV, and former defensive line coach Ricky Longo is also coaching the D-line up at UNLV. Hunter knows him well, of course, Coach Longo, from his time on the Rolovich staff at the University of Hawaii. UNLV last year went 5-7, 3-5 in the Mountain West. That was after a 4-1 start. They lost 6 straight, the last of which was that loss at Hawaii that kind of cemented things, guaranteed a losing season, no bowl bid. They ended up beating Nevada in the final game of the season, kept the Fremont Trophy painted red, but it wasn't enough to keep that staff around. They hire Barry Odom away from Missouri, and he's doing a really, really good job, Hunter. This is a team that scores a lot, that runs the football really, really well. Forgive me if this is a familiar refrain. New Mexico State, Oregon, Albany for what they were doing, right? Kind of similar, a lot of running, a lot of spread, a lot of tempo. So they'll be well versed in some of this stuff. A little bit different look in how they go about things from New Mexico State, but similar type of challenge for this defense. I think Hawaii is a fair underdog in this ball game.
Yep.
I think somewhere between 8 and 10 was probably where I would have guessed the line at, and that's where it opened. It's been bumped up to 11. This is going to be a task, and you get the feeling, although it didn't turn into this last week, you get the feeling kind of like what we thought against New Mexico State, like Hawaii's going to have to score. They're going to have to score, and keep pace with this UNLV team, and hopefully keep them off the field a little bit.
Yeah, the only game that they didn't score 30 were actually correct me. The only game they did not score 40 was the Michigan game.
Yeah.
So this is a high-powered offense. And by the way, they beat Vandy. So just from a comparing resumes perspective, we weren't able to do that, and they were. So I don't know if you want to read too far into that, but it's almost a similar non-conference set of games to us. Obviously, we had one more, but back to that conversation, from Craig Angeles about scheduling an A, maybe a couple B games, and then a C game. Well, they opened the year with a C opponent against Bryant. They beat them, and then they go up to Michigan. That would be an A. They lose that one. They probably have another A minus, B plus in Vandy. They take care of those guys, and then a B or a B minus in UTEP, and they handled them. So I'm bringing all that up because they kind of opened the year in a similar kind of a structure schedule-wise as Hawaii. The look that's going to be different for us is very, what's the word? It's very telling on who is going to be their quarterback, either Doug Brumfield or Maeva from Kailua, actually. So local boy has been playing well for them, and they've kind of been bouncing back and forth throughout the season, Jaden Maeva. And depending on who plays is going to bring a much different look to that offense. Jaden Maeva, much more of a dual threat, a little bit of a runner. Similar kind of to Chevin Cordero in my mind, very kind of reminiscent of his style of play. And then Doug Brumfield's a little bit bigger cat, and can throw the rock. So I'm sure that our defense is preparing for both of those guys, getting ready for a variety of looks that they're going to throw at them. I think that covers it on the defensive side of the football. Name of the game, Jordan, we got to score points. We don't have any more time. This is conference play. We have got to find a way to get the ball out of Braden Shager's hands. I don't know how many times I've said it. Out of his hands, into our playmakers' hands, even if it's a hitch. Let them get yards after catch and get the ball down the field and try to get to that number 30, because it's going to take at least 30 to beat these guys. They've proven it week in, week out that they score points. And our conference is kind of the pendulum has kind of swung to that side of the spectrum. This is a conference where you got to score points if you want to do well. So that's just kind of what we got to do.
Yeah, their last two games, right? That win against Vandy was a late field goal. They beat them 40-37. And then last week against UTEP, 45-28. So it's pretty high scoring affairs there for UNLV. And then, of course, yeah, you talk about the quarterbacks, right? Brumfield's got a whip for an arm. A pretty athletic guy as well. They're listed as basically top of the depth chart, he and Jaden Maeva. Kaimukhi guy, who graduated from Liberty High School in Vegas. They do have that other Kailua quarterback as well, in Cam Friel, who we saw a little bit last year. So they've played a lot of different quarterbacks over the last couple of seasons. And we could see either or both of Maiava and Brumfield perhaps in that game this weekend. Maiava was the Mountain West Conference Freshman of the Week last week. And then again, Brumfield is electric and may just be available this week as well. Ricky White and Jacob DeJesus are their top two pass catchers. But it's really about the run game with this group, right? That averages 34 points per game. They allow 28 points per game. So I think Hawaii's got a chance to put some points on the board here. But they run it for 190 yards per game and they throw it for 190 yards per game. Like, this is a very, very balanced group from UNLV as they go through the season. It's a group, throw it for 190 and run it for 190.8. I had to double check my work here and make sure I didn't copy and paste the wrong thing.
In that Vandy game, they had 9 different guys run the ball. So similar to like Hawaii having 9 different guys catching the ball, they aren't afraid of jet sweeps, a little option now and again. I've even seen not quite power eye, but bringing a fullback out there too. They will throw different looks at you in the running attack. And yeah, if they're averaging 200 on both sides, that means that they're well versed on being able to move the football.
Yeah, that's what excuse me, that's what they do, right? 380 yards per game total offense. By comparison, Hawaii averaging 22.6 points per game, giving up 32.8 and averaging 332 yards per game in total offense, 271 through the air, 61 rushing yards. Jet Thomas and Pitt transfer Vincent Davis, really kind of the two-headed monster in the backfield. And as Hunter has pointed out, a very deep stable of ball carriers. They get some guys involved, right? A lot of two back, bringing in guys from the slots. But Jet Thomas last week against UTEP, 13 carries, 100 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7.7 yards per carry. Vincent Davis, 13 carries, 97 yards. Maiava also ran it for 28 yards. They also had Courtney Reese, who averaged 9.7 yards per carry on his way to 58 yards. This is a group that has run for 14 touchdowns and thrown for 1. So that, again, it's the ground game that the Rebels rely on and that they've been really, really good at.
That's worrisome for us, man. That's worrisome for Hawaii.
And again, that's, similar to New Mexico State, right? Similar to what Oregon likes to do. And I guess that, again, that's a different caliber of team, similar to what U Albany like to do. And I think, UNLV is obviously better than them, but at least, they've seen these spread, multifaceted running attacks for a few weeks in a row now. And they're going to have to tackle. They're going to have to tackle in space. They're going to have to be pretty disciplined and not get out of assignment because guys can hit home runs in this running attack. And then, they've got a passing game that's a nice little complement to that, no matter who the quarterback is. And of course, they've got a guy in Brendan Marion who everywhere he's gone and called plays has done a pretty darn good job. And we'll be looking, I'm sure, to put up some points once again. So yeah, this is a tall task. This is a tall task for the University of Hawaii. Again, they are double-digit underdogs. I don't think that's going to change before kickoff on Saturday. And so we talked a little bit about what it's going to take to score some points. How do you see the path to victory, if you will, Hunter, here on Saturday?
Man, with everything you just said, if you were to scout Hawaii week in, week out, I don't know why we wouldn't why other teams try anything besides run it right down our throats. We don't do well playing defense against the run. I feel like we've done a halfway decent job to kind of patch the holes in a ship that has some leaking water in it. But that's kind of our weakness. It has been for the last couple of years. We're a little bit more experienced in defending the pass, and we're not super big in the trenches. So that to me is worrisome. However, if we're able to kind of corral this group of receivers together and commit this week. Like, I don't think we can get to that number without fully committing to the run and shoot and getting some things going in the passing game that would allow us to get to north of 30 points. It's gonna take that sort of effort to even put us in the ball game. And we knew before the start of the year that UNLV was on the rise. They have been for a few years now. They're no longer that kind of circle on our schedule, and we are probably going to need some balls to come our direction. I think taking care of the football for us and maybe trying to punch one out or two on their end, causing a couple fumbles, maybe an interception if they do throw it. It will be one of those games that Hawaii will need to be excellent and UNLV will need to be a little sloppy for us to win this one.
Got to take advantage, create some havoc, take advantage, get going, and maybe make this a close game down the stretch like they did against New Mexico State with a chance to go pull it out. Boy, it'd be nice for this group to start the conference off 1-0. It'd be great, to get to 500 through the first half of the schedule at 3-3. Another big game, right? And obviously with the bye week, the following week, you can kind of sell out a little bit more. There's going to be some time to recuperate. And then you got the big home game against San Diego State come October 14th before they get into the stretch where they're basically going to play 7 weeks in a row to close out the season there. Again, we'll have full coverage for you on ESPN Honolulu, including countdown to kickoff leading you up to the start of UNLV. You can catch it on Spectrum Sports pay-per-view as well here in the islands, the Team One Sports app. If you're on the mainland, I think I neglected to mention that last week. And then if you're like in Southern Nevada, they have a local broadcast there as well. That I'm sure if you're listening to us in Southern Nevada, you've got a much better understanding of the TV situation there, or just go find a sports book or a nice little watering hole to go watch that thing. It should be a lot of fun this week. One little interesting note, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, Hunter, but wanted to kind of close with this. New Mexico State, now that they're in Conference USA, they no longer have that Flow Sports deal for their TV broadcast, right? A lot of it is now under the Conference USA contract, where they have partnerships with CBS Sports Network and ESPN Plus, and so they get much more exposure. But they will at least play as many national TV games this year as Hawaii. And if not more, because there's a couple of those where like CBS Sports can opt in, pick up their game. And that doesn't even include the ESPN Plus games, which is a pretty big reach, right?
Wow.
It's streaming, but it's a pretty big reach. And then UNLV is going to play at least 5 national televised games, including that Michigan game where they were on big CBS. They'll play on CBS Sports a couple of times. They'll play on Fox and FS1 a couple of times this season. So they'll have at least 5 national televised games, right? Hawaii's got 4 this season. They've already played 3 of them, Pac-12 Network, SEC Network, CBS Sports, and then they got the San Diego State game as well coming up a little bit later on in October. And so it just kind of caught my eye, especially the New Mexico State situation, right? And for UNLV, right, they're operating under similar circumstances as Hawaii under the Mountain West contract. A lot of those Mountain West games, right, the networks can opt in and out, things of that nature. And obviously with the national TV picking up the Stanford game earlier this season as well. And some years they're going to pick up more, some less. Obviously you win, you become competitive. That's going to draw a little bit bigger TV intrigue. But when you're talking about competing with programs for recruits, UNLV, right, it's a pretty like-to-like comparison in terms of program stature. They've obviously got way more resources than the University of Hawaii with their brand new practice facilities and all that. And obviously they're playing at Allegiant Stadium, which is a spaceship, and state of the art where they're playing, while Hawaii is in the situation that it is. We don't need to rehash that. We don't need to litigate that. But just the exposure, and obviously, look, do work for Spectrum, and I think we do a good job, but it is still the pay-per-view, and it is still not necessarily quite the reach that you can get on the mainland more than anything. And I just found it kind of interesting that New Mexico State and UNLV will get basically just as much, if not more, national TV exposure, unless you're dedicated to that Team One Sports app, than the University of Hawaii.
Whatever we have to do, and when I say we, I mean the Mountain West, to get that ESPN Plus package, I think we need to try to shoot for that. It's not ideal, but in some ways, it's just easier, more feasible for people to watch their kids play from all over the place. Streaming isn't going to bring in as much revenue for your school, but in some ways, eyeballs to me, Jordan, are more important than revenue. It's better for the brand. It's better for recruiting. And it's where the world is going right now. And schools like New Mexico State are able to capitalize in that kind of in those crosshairs. So yeah, rather than get bummed out about it, it's kind of a good little I don't know, learning lesson on where things are at right now, and where maybe Hawaii could try to shoot towards in the next few years when maybe some things change around. I don't know. It's encouraging because New Mexico State was not on our level a couple of years ago, and now have kind of bumped past us in some ways. Maybe not always. We just beat them, but it is definitely an interesting perspective whenever you look at it like that.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of the dilemma, right? Because I get what the University of Hawaii, or what the thought process is when they signed the TV deal, right? And the guaranteed revenue of pay-per-view, or the guaranteed revenue of the TV contract that includes the rights for Spectrum to charge pay-per-view for the football games, for an athletic department that doesn't make a ton of money, right? That needs more money. The guaranteed nature of that contract is something that is hard to turn down. And then the dilemma is, hey, look, if you put it behind a paywall, is the guaranteed revenue worth more? Does it outweigh the future potential earnings or the future potential losses of not having your program exposed to fans, to future fans, to kids, to recruits, and things like that, right? And I think that's been the dilemma for the athletic department for the better part of 20 years now. And it's not an easy one to make, right? Because a lot of it is bottom line. A lot of it has to do with funding. A lot of that has to do with paying the bills. But has it paid off, or is it worth the short term versus the long term? I think is a big part of that conversation. And in years where there is a nice little balance, where you're looking at 50-50 national TV games versus locally pay-per-viewed games, I think it's kind of nice. But this year it's 4-9, right? It's not quite 50-50, and you're playing on, it's cool to play on Pac-12 network and the SEC network, but it's not, New Mexico State's season opener against UMass, the same time Vandy was playing Hawaii on the SEC network, was on ESPN, like the ESPN, like big ESPN. And it's like, wow, that's New Mexico State and UMass. That was week 0. And so it was just kind of interesting to see how all these things play out. And we know that TV dollars control college football, and that's why we're in the predicament that we are in. And by we, I mean the entire landscape of college football, where the Pac-12 is going up in flames, and where, Stanford and Cal have to go play in the ACC, and so it's just part of a bigger conversation. This isn't necessarily just at UH or being critical or anything like that, but
talk about timing too, man. Like the Pac-12 was literally 3 months too late. That's it.
Yeah, it'd be really curious to see what one of the smart, maybe former TV execs would say. It's like, what is the value of the conference now, with the fact that you've got Colorado doing what they're doing, when you've got Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix,
multiple top 25 teams. Like they're one of the
9
best
last
conferences.
week. I don't know what the number is this week. I don't know if anybody fell out. And the buzz and I get it, like Colorado's not necessarily going to go win the conference, but the buzz that they've created, it's great. It's great. Adds value. And now they're going to dissolve into like 4 different conferences, right? Some to the Big 12, some to the Big 10, some to the ACC, and wherever the heck where Oregon State and Washington State are going to land. 2 of the better teams in the conference that are just getting left behind. Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, it'd be interesting if those negotiations had held on until now. What a shame. It just bums me out every time I think about it, especially how good the Pac-12 has been this season. Arguably the best conference in the country. I don't know when's the last time you could say that. Top to bottom. Just insane. All right. I think it's probably a good point to wrap it up here, Hunter. Again, big thanks to Spectrum Mobile, Hawaii USA, Federal Credit Union, and Battery Bill for sponsoring our podcast. Big thanks to our guy Jaron for filling in. Big thanks to you, Hunter. And did want to close here by sending our love and everything we got really to our guy Jonathan, who has ably and very, very, very expertly produced our podcast here for a while now. Want to dedicate this to his family and the rest of this season, I should say, to his family and to his late father, Benjamin Cayetano Salvador, who we lost last week. And just want to send all of our love to the Salvador Ohana. Jonathan's dad was a big supporter of the pod, and really honestly an even bigger supporter of the great work that Jonathan has been doing, on his own with ESPN Honolulu, all the multimedia stuff he is doing, a lot of the content that you see on any one of our platforms at ESPN Honolulu. Jonathan's usually behind the camera or in front of the computer, kind of editing and putting all of that stuff together, all the really cool stuff you see on social media, a lot of the different podcasts, the programs that you see on our digital media platforms. That's all our guy Jonathan. Nobody was a bigger fan of his. Nobody was a bigger supporter than his dad, Benjamin. And so, all of our condolences and love to the Salvador Ohana. And we'll be thinking about our guy Jonathan, and just want to kind of dedicate the rest of the season here as we move throughout the 2023 campaign to Mr. Salvador. Yeah,
couldn't have said any better, Jordan. Jonathan, we love you, man, and thoughts and prayers are with you. And you're a part of the Brotherhood. You're a part of our family, and we mourn with you, man. It's can't imagine what you guys are going through, but we're with you, and wish you guys all the best.
Yeah, same here, man. Love you, Jonathan. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you guys next week right here on Hawaii Football Now.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helly and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.